Hello friends. I was going to do this off camera and then it dawned on me that this might be actually this would be a really good independent broadcast, but too late for that now. I'm already into it. What I'm going to show you in the next few minutes is a method, a crazy method that I've developed in the last several years for getting ready to do a portrait session. Many years ago, I took a portrait class from Daniel Green. You can Google him. He's one of the big dogs. Big dog portrait painters in America. I'm assuming he's still with us. He'd be pretty old now if he is. But anyway, and Daniel Green, who is light years beyond me as a portrait painter, showed us a method, a technique. He pre-mixes, especially when he's painting a portrait live, which I heartily recommend, and I am not doing anybody live today, but he pre-mixes all of his flesh tones in very neat rows, like light to dark flesh tone, light to dark blush, redder, light to dark in every, more yellow, more green, more blue, more red, and so on and so forth. Each one, so everything is all lined out. It would, my guess is, it would take an hour and a half or so to do what he recommended. And y'all, I just don't have an hour and a half to mess. He probably actually had assistants do it for him. I wouldn't be surprised, being a big dog. So I'm just showing you a method that I've been using for the last several years that I would just call down and dirty, quick, fast, shortcut method for creating flesh tones. And I just realized I don't have black on my palette, which I normally do. Believe it or not, I know that old thing about don't use black, I know that old saying. I used to say it. I don't say it anymore. Everybody that says don't use black should be saying don't misuse black. That's what they really mean, is don't misuse black. And I heartily agree with that. Do not misuse black. But anyway, that's another story for another time. So what you see me doing is just sort of wandering all over the palette, mixing up a whole bunch of random, I sounded very southern when I just said that, random flesh tones. By the way, the blue and the purple, that's for who knows what, the whites of the eyes, the teeth, any number of things on a face might be gray or bluish. And I'm also running out of oxide red. Forgive me, I do need to get more of that out. Well, it gives me the opportunity to say my favorite oxide red happens to be made by Charbin, out of France. And listen, when an artist says that, you don't need to grab your notebook and say, oh, write that down. No. That's not the way this art thing works. Every person, yourself included, you don't have to be a medium big dog to have your own opinion. Basically, here's what happens in paint colors, and this is me fighting back a little bit against the snob mentality, which I usually do strike against. When I say my favorite oxide red happens to be made by Charbin, forgive me all you francophones, that just means I personally, myself, happen to like the way this one company mixes their colors. In fact, speaking of which, and I'm a big fan of who is it? Michael Harding. Yeah, I love Michael Harding, and I love Richardson, but I disagree. It's just it's not better or worse. I just disagree with Michael Harding's Scarlet Lake color. That doesn't mean they're wrong. I'm sure they're right, but I much prefer Rami. No, there's another one in here somewhere. Hang on just a second. I much prefer Winsor Newton, and those are that's Winsor Newton's Scarlet Lakes, and that's Michael Harding's Scarlet Lake. So I like the warmer, more orange version. So there you go. That's an example of the color that So I'm going to try to remember just for me. But you might say, Michael Harding's Scarlet Lake is my favorite. Oh, great! That's perfectly good for you. So my point being, don't follow some big dog, and certainly don't follow some little dog like me. All right. So after several minutes of blathering away, there's my quick down and dirty mixture of flesh tones. And I'm not going to tell you what the recipe is because I don't even know. It doesn't even matter. I don't care what it is. I do use a lot of oxide red. I use quite a bit of Naples yellow or orange or yellow ochre. Beyond that, who knows? Oh, and I use a fair amount of, don't write this down, any of this. I use a fair amount of raw umber. All right, let's officially get started on this video, which is already been called Finishing Touches on a Portrait. Hey, some people, Uncle, Merry Christmas to you. Hello, David Mercer. And Peachy, good to see you all. Bless you, bless you, bless you. Nice shot of my bald head. Let's make this official. It used to be Daily Art Adventure. Now it's Dan's Art Adventure, number 35, Finishing Touches on a Portrait. Good to see you, old friends. Okay, I'll just keep going. I was thinking of taking a detour, but I'm not. Now I do need to move you out of my way a little bit. Get out of my way, would you? All right, a little bit of background. This is my first cousin once removed. So his name is Jeff. His dad was my first cousin. So he's my first cousin once removed. And this is a photo from a couple years ago when he was newly married to his lovely bride, Maria. And I agreed to do a portrait for them, big family discount. And alas, this painting has been sitting unfinished off to my left for nearly 2 years. So that's what happens when you get a family discount. All right, so just a few comments about where I'm at. I've spent way more time on this than I wanted to. Once removed means a generation apart, evidently, Uncle. And I don't understand this stuff, but my daughter does. So she explained it to me, my 40-year-old daughter. Dad. So I've utilized a pretty high degree of photomechanical tricks. I won't show them to you because I'm using my iPad for the broadcast. But basically, I had an iPad right here with this photo on it, and I would take a picture of my painting and then superimpose it on top of the photograph. Does that make sense to you? And then I could slide it back and forth so it would, transparent, disappear, see, opaque, transparent, opaque, transparent, opaque, transparent. And I did that actually several times. So here's what I know. It's a little bit tacky. I did this, his jacket, didn't put enough liquid in the paint, evidently. Did that just at 11 o'clock last night. Here's what I know. All the lines, so to speak, on both of these portraits are dead on. So don't be saying it. Somebody already say it? No, don't be saying. Don't be saying, his nose looks, move his eye, blah, blah, blah. You can say that if you want to, knock yourself out, but you're wrong. Sorry, you're way wrong. Everything is dead on. Okay, now, having said that, anybody who's ever done portraiture knows this is the truth. All the cheating, I'll use that word, but cheating is legal. Now, since I say that, let me go here. All cheating is legal. Everybody does it. That's not quite true. Rembrandt doesn't do it. He didn't do it when he was alive either. Anyway, almost everybody does it. It's perfectly okay to cheat. The only caveat, the only exception, you old timers have heard this 1,000 times. The more you cheat, the more your drawing skills deteriorate. Okay? So if you want to become a better drawer, you need to build those muscles where you just copy. So I hate to cheat because I hate to get worse at drawing. But when it comes to a portrait, even if it's for a family member, it's got to be dead on. So cheat away. But okay, what I'm going to say, and forgive me for using the word cheat, please, some photomechanical tricks. All the photomechanical tricks in the world are legal. Go ahead and do it. Just remember, if you want to become a better artist, you're going to have to counterbalance that cheating with working out, exercising your drawing skills. Okay? Some uncle just asked. It's actually, thanks for asking. It's actually gator board. I'm not sure why I did this. Gator board is kind of like industrial strength foam core. It's not paper. It's actually you can hear it. It's actually a clay product. It actually breaks off like a little china plate, sort of. Very good stuff. And I have mounted probably with acrylic gel. I have glued linen canvas, linen to the board. Okay, and I did start out this painting just by drawing, so to speak, by the seat of my pants. This is not the whole image, but I had the whole image, and I just stood back and drew. That's part of the reason why his head goes off the top of the canvas. Now, I talked about this before, but I'll repeat it now. I think one of the reasons I prefer beginning a portrait without any photomechanical tricks is that most of the time anyway, my intuition is better than slavishly following the photograph. So in this case, I was a little surprised. The painting, the portrait started emerging on the canvas, and and all of a sudden, wait a minute, his head goes right off the top of the canvas. And I kind of scratched, this is a couple years ago, I scratched my chin and said, is that a good idea? And I finally concluded that it was. So there's what the top of his head looks like, right? Like so many young men these days, unlike me, who are going bald, they just say, what the heck, and they shave it all off, right? And I actually think this is a good way to handle. So I think my intuition is right. You could disagree with me, you might be right. All right, so I start out, and then I use photomechanical tricks to correct and correct and correct and correct. So I've done a whole bunch of that. All right, now, anybody who's done portraiture using photomechanical tricks, you know very well what I'm about to say. You've experienced this. Yeah. All the cheating in the world only gets you but so far. After all the cheating is done, you have to go back to drawing. That's exactly where I am with this painting. So I know that all the lines, all the edges are, within microns or millimeters of accurate, close enough. But there are still going to be, there are things that make me go, something doesn't look right. And I'm not even sure what is. I haven't studied it yet, even in preparation for this video. But I can give you a couple categories because I've done this before, and I know the kinds of things that are not right. And you can write these down. Yes, you're exactly right. It's not cheating. It's expeditious use of time. You're exactly correct. That's exactly correct. There are a couple things, especially for me, and most of you as well, that we end up with when we are slavishly copying all the edges. Two things happen. One is many of the edges become too hard and they need to be softened. That's one. Number two, yeah, Uncle, that's a great cheat, by the way. I have done that years ago, but it was a great cheat. Just get it printed out, or you can get it printed out in black and white, right? Or whatever, blue and green even, if it's a portrait. That's a great cheat. Expeditious use of time. So one of the things that happens is edges become too hard, and number two, contrast becomes too much. How do you say that? Contrast becomes too contrasty. The tones are a little bit too contrast, because I'm focused. And I wasn't working from this, actually. I was working from an iPad, and the colors in the iPad do pop more than this. This is closer to the iPad and closer to real. All right, so there are two things that need to be fixed on this. Let me put this somewhere where I can have good reference. You guys may not be able to see it, but I'll be able to see it. Let's put this down so it doesn't fall down right in the middle of my working. So I'm not going to finish the painting right now. I see your comments about the shadow. It's not exactly correct because there's actually a light highlight right here, and I've got that here, and I've actually got my neck darker, but that's right. There's right here is where it's not correct. There needs to be a little bit of darkness coming up here. So it's not even up here. It's down just right there. But be that as it may, thanks for your thoughts. Now let me try to. I guess I'll start with him. Okay, an easy one. I see it right away. His eyebrows here are too dark. Real easy mistake. In fact, Michael Card, who you regulars know, he's one of my favorite artists to quote, just because he's such a good teacher and is so generous with his information. He says the number one mistake that what he calls beginner. So I guess he's calling me a beginner. He says number one mistake that beginning portrait painters make is too much contrast. The darks are too dark and the lights are too light. Now, if I know this principle, then why didn't I just go ahead and fix it while I was doing it? Well, I did, some. But I still missed some. That still needs a little bit of red in it. Plus, some of you old-timers, you might have heard me say in the past, I usually don't have an opportunity to show you this step of my painting process. I'm right now doing what I call Sergeantizing my portrait. I'll explain that in just a minute. For me, to Sergeantize a portrait means to come back and make the brush strokes throughout the painting, here and there, a little bit more lively. Right, so clearly the big difference between me and a really good portrait painter, in my opinion, is that the really good portrait painter, there will be a more energetic brush strokes. Okay, so again, knowing that, then why don't I just go ahead and make my brush strokes more energetic? Well, sometimes I do, but here's the reason. It's because I'm at a level of portraiture where I'm struggling and grunting and groaning and measuring and gritting my teeth just to get it accurate, right? And all of that punctilious attention to detail usually results in lines, edges that are too hard, and values that are too contrasty. Okay, so if I was better and didn't have to work so hard at achieving perfection, then I could do looser brushstrokes. Since I'm not there yet in my journey, at least I know that I'm not there. So that means that makes me go, okay, well, in a sense, I could say, okay, all the drawing part's done. Now it's time to loosen it up. So it's kind of cheating. A lot of talk about cheating in this broadcast tonight, eh? Little rag here. I'm going to take off some of the paint I just put on. By the way, that is a great trick in all painting. Don't be afraid to mess your paint. You mess your paint up, rubbing, scratching, whatever. All right, now I'm looking at his eyes. Another way, while I'm thinking, another way to describe my approach and my weakness, frankly, is that because I'm so focused on getting the drawing correct, when I'm done with that phase, as I am now, I end up with a painting. This can happen in plein air painting or anything, not just portraiture. After all that, again, fastidious attention to detail, I end up with a painting that is what I call overdrawn. Not like my bank account, but a painting that is drawn too much, too much drawn. Does that make sense? And so now I'm going to go back into this overdrawn painting and infuse it with some messiness. Now, hopefully tasteful messiness, not bad messiness. So let's zoom back in here. One of the things, again, looking at the photograph, the whites of his eyes are a little too white. So I've got a little tiny bit of dirt on these brushes. You know what I mean by dirt? You know what I mean? I don't even know what color to call it. Just now I've got pink on. I know what to call that. A little bit too much there. Wipe it off just enough. This is the same thing over here. A little bit more pink. And I'm trying to be careful, not to be too careful. Right now, his upper eyelid, and I do need black paint for this. Again, so those of you who learned as I did, don't use black. Well, it's time for you to grow up from that sophomoric instruction that, like you, I got in college. And the truth is, don't misuse black, which beginner painters are, of course, totally tempted to do. They think if a color needs to be darker, add black. Well, that's what the professors mean. That's what that expression means. That's what it's aimed at. No, do not. Something needs to be darker, add black. No. The reason is because black kills color, right? And most of the time as artists, and our stock in trade, our what we work in is color. So most of the time we don't want to go around killing color, but sometimes some colors need to be killed. I said that one time in a class that I was teaching. I said some colors need to be killed, and one of my students said, "Which ones?" Sorry to laugh at. I hope it wasn't any of you. No, wrong point completely. No, wrong point. What I mean, in the context of a painting, there are some colors that need to be pushed back. So just remember, whenever you use black, it's a very dangerous color. All right, enough of that. So what I've just done, and you guys can't even see it, it's so subtle, but I just did a dull, dark brown on top of the black eyelashes that were there. All right, hey, here's a good, oh, by the way, I've been doing this quite a bit lately. Whatever it takes to get the job done. Here, this is worth the price of admission today. Let me show you. You can probably recognize this. I have a couple of them. This is an old paintbrush handle. I'm looking for the other one. Here it is. Okay. Doesn't matter what kind, what brand. You like me, you have a bunch of old paintbrushes that's gone bad, right? Of course you do. So you throw most of them out. Sorry about that itchy nose. I stick these in a pencil sharpener. Break off the brush, sharpen both ends, and then finish sharpening them on a piece of sandpaper. And I use the heck out of these things. I am finding, because they're nice hard wood, it's not pine, a dowel wouldn't do. And wood, I have some other tools that are metal, but the metal ones are too hard. So that's a good trick right there. I'm glad we're on. Now, of course, the painting world, they make things kind of like for doing that, you know, paint movers. These are all rubber, and they're good too. But they're most of the time for me they're too soft. I don't want to anyway. So what I just did on his eyelid, I'm now going to mess up a little bit, scrape off a little bit. I make one end more blunt than the other so it moves a little bit more paint around. All right, now let's zoom. Yeah, who paid the price of admission? Here's a weird one, gang. And I'm not going to finish this painting course. It would be here for hours, and that would be awful. I'm putting a little bit of pure black. No, I'm going to add some raw umber to that, but quite a bit of liquid on my brush. And here I am using a Winsor Newton Series 7 and putting on my super X-ray glasses. And by the way, I can put my hand down here in the painting because it's all dry. And I'm going to redraw the edge of his iris. Why am I redrawing? You're going to do both of them. Let me look at the photograph. Yeah, yes, both of them have blue-green, quite blue-green eyes. But why am I doing this? It may be different than you think. I'm doing that. I'm going to clean, by the way, you're not supposed to use Winsor Newton Series 7s for oils because it just destroys them. So I have resolved myself to, that's a price I'm just willing to pay. It's destroying my... All right, the reason I did that is because I actually want to soften that transition. So here I'm using my stick. Talk about cheating. You could say, well, did John Sargent ever do that? I would go, are you kidding? He would turn over in his grave if he saw me, you know. Thus confirming, I ain't no John Singer Sargent. What I just did is, and again, I wish you could see it, but you saw me do it. I just softened the edge of that iris. Why? Because throughout the entire painting, my edges tend to be too hard. Now, let's do one other category before I leave for the day. And not because I don't want to do too much here. I really should have done this before I did all that, but let's go to her, for instance. All right, I find this very often. I was very carefully trying to render and copy. But her face looks just a tiny bit washed out, a tiny bit too pale. And I don't know if it looks that way to you, but it looks that way to me. So I have just dipped my brush, a soft brush by the way, not a bristle brush, but a soft brush. I just dipped a soft brush into my liquid, which is of course my medium of choice, and then picked up an infinitesimal amount of oxide red. And even the infinitesimal amount is too much. So don't panic with me. probably no. Yeah, and her teeth are too wet. You go right over her teeth. I'm gonna go over her whole face. Now the amount of paint that was on my brush was almost undetectable, and yet it's screaming out loud on this painting. Okay, now hang in there with me for just a minute. Don't leave. Some of you know where I'm going next. Okay, so I have just warmed up her whole face considerably, and it looks terrible. I have here, nice, clean, whoops, rag. Hope somebody else gets that front door. And now I'm going to lift out. The harder I press and the longer I rub, the more paint comes off, right? Whoops, I just picked up some black paint from her hair. Let's wipe that off, okay. Now, if I so choose, yes, I'm going to wipe off her teeth, but not completely. I'm pushing very lightly right now. If I decide that that whole glaze thing was a mistake, then I'll just keep on rubbing harder and more longer. By the way, here the crease underneath her nose, do you see that little black mark? That's way too dark. And the shadow under her nose, let me show you what so there, see, this should be darker all down here. It's a little bit too light. That's the kind of stuff I'm going to fix. Now, what I'm doing right now, by the way, does not count as sergeantizing, because I have not done any lively brush strokes. Scumbling on or glazing is not energetic. Right now, yeah, that's actually better. That's better. Yeah. Now, since I've just mentioned that crease underneath her nose, let me find a color of brown and see if I can diminish that quite a bit. That's still a little bit too dark. Now here's a principle that I talk about all the time, even on my plein air architectural paintings. Darks first, lights last. That's almost universal. Very rarely is that rule countermanded by a more important. There, that's pretty good. Almost always, and certainly in portraiture, that is the case. You do darks first. So like I just did that crease under her nose, right? That means theoretically I should follow up, looking at the photograph, yeah? Follow up with light on each side of that little crease. And I wish you guys could see this. I know I'm working so fine you can hardly even see what I'm doing. Much better. I can even diminish it as much as I want with this lighter color that's on my brush. That little crease is not unattractive, and she's a very beautiful woman, but that little crease is not unattractive, but you wouldn't want too much of it. Is that fair to say? It's not something that you'd want emphasized. Like if you're going to err in portraiture, it happens all the time. In fact, in every part of a face, you should just assume that you're going to err. Either the line's going to be half a millimeter or two this way, this way, this way, this way, or the color's going to be too light, too dark, too dark. In every case, you try to err on the side of aesthetics. Like let's assume on a woman, you're going to get the eyes the wrong size. Just assume. Because we don't have the ability to do, microscopic. So just assume everything's slightly wrong. And here's the important caveat or follow-up. In that case, you always try to err on the side of flattering. And I'm talking about microscopic levels, just about, right? So if you're going to make her eye either a little too big or a little too small, because it's almost humanly impossible to get it perfect, you err on the side of slightly too large. Likewise, this little crease right here that I was just talking about, it's not unattractive, but if I'm going to err on one side or the other, I'm going to err on, in this case, softening it, not exaggerating it. Right now I'm doing the shadow under her nose. That's better. And the word shadow is really quite inadequate. Shadow doesn't cover it. It's what color is the shadow? How intense is the shadow? That's what we're really looking at. I'm going to wrap up here shortly. Let's do one more thing. After having done the glaze trick that you just saw me do a few minutes ago, all right, glazed and wiped it off. What was that? Was that a darkening step or a lightening? It was a darkening step, of course. I made the painting darker by putting a glaze on it. And anytime you add dark to your painting, that almost always means you're not finished, because you must come back and add light to the painting. Now here is where I am trying to Sergeantize my painting. In fact, the Sergeantizing effect applies almost exclusively to the light tones in the portrait, because the light tones are what you do last, and the light tones are the strokes you do last are the brush strokes that are going to show up the most. So I'm using a fairly large bristly brush, and other than that finger and that finger right there, I'm trying to allow these brush strokes to remain, to show through. Does that make sense? Now, what I still have to do on her is do some subtle color correction, some of what I started doing up here on his eyes. And by the way, I'm going to do the same thing to his face I did to hers. I am liking the overall tone of this face, the warmer tone. Oh, here's a crease down here that's too dark. I keep saying I'm just about done, but let me see if I can fix that really quickly. So I'm going to try to mix up. Again, for those of you who came late, let me show you my down and dirty, fast color flesh tone palette. I mixed those up in about 10 minutes really quickly. Okay, I don't know if I've got, I think that's too light. Let me mix up something darker. We'll find out here in a second. Oh, that's still too dark and too yellow, so I want something more red and lighter. So I just look for something on my messy palette that's a little bit lighter and a little less yellow. Let's try this. There we go, there we go. And again, Sergeantizing means that I try to leave some of these strokes showing. I'm going to leave that for now. I'm going to keep the same brush, wipe it off with the tissue, and add a lighter color to it, a little bit lighter than what I just did, and do her smile line right here. Again, because I'm Sergeantizing the painting, I'm trying to use bold strokes, not, resisting the temptation to blend. I have to do the same thing to all three of these creases. There's a line there, and there. They're all too intense. They're all too dark. Let me see if I can do this one real quick. That was too dark, but let me mix up a lighter color. that's okay. But now that I've gone there, I discover that the shadow, and her lips need to be the edges of her lips. I'm doing a shadow under her lip right now, by the way, making it a little bit more orange, red orange. And while I've got this very good color on my brush. By the way, you notice I'm painting with one hand. Yeah, I hate it, but there's a time and place for one-handed painting. This is it. Again, resisting the temptation to blend. Just put the stroke down and leave it. All right, I think I'll end there. I'll just, again, tell you where I'm going, where I will go. There's still several places in her eye, in both faces, where the edges are too hard. So I'll just soften this nostril, for instance. It's perfect, it's accurate, it's in the right place, it's too hard. And then I'll continue to look at subtle tweaks in value. I want to make sure that the edges of her iris are not razor sharp. I think the way it is right now, even though in the photograph the top of her top lip is quite crisp, it's quite a firm line. I don't want it. I don't want my painting line, that line, to be that exact in my painting. It's overdone. Oh, and here's another, by the way. The gums showing above her teeth are darker. So here's an area where I need to darken, because right now her smile looks like it's more wider than it is here. But that's what's going on. It's not the measurement. It's the gums are darker, and I got them a little bit too light right here in the middle, etc., etc. Her teeth are a little bit too light, and his teeth are a little bit too light, so I'm going to darken them both. That goes under, the exaggerated tone problem that we all have to fight against. All right, that's all I'm going to do. Let me see what you guys have been saying, and I've seen a lot of good comments, but I haven't caught them all. Thanks for joining me, by the way. Oh, and just for what it's worth, one thing I have not liked about 2023 is how much I've not been broadcasting. It does look like that's going to change, and I'm going to be back online more, not like I was a couple years ago where it was 5 days a week, but at least 1 day a week. But big change. It's not going to be Dan the Art Man. It's going to be Dan the Arts Man. Things are shaping up. I'm working very hard, and I'm going to be doing music, art, and literature. Writing, spoken word, poetry slam kind of stuff, because that's who I am and that's what I do. So I'm a very hardworking musician, and hopefully you guys are going to be able to see that in this coming year. And Peachy 3435 says, yeah, the shortcuts give you the bones. It's exactly right, but fleshing it out, the 3D-ness takes old-fashioned knowledge and drawing. It's exactly right. And somebody said, yeah, Peachy, before I did the smile line, said they're a little bit too contrasty. They are. Thanks for noticing. Well, thank you. Hey, I've got an idea. I might do something just for fun here. Okay, let me see. What can I unplug? Not that. Okay. I'm going to take you guys just for fun on a quick little tour of the Nelson household. Some of you old timers haven't been here in a while. This painting, I'm hoping to modify. It's one of my super realistic paintings that I did a few years ago, but I've never been happy with it because the lighting is just not right. So that one I'm going to modify and then hopefully enter into Oil Painters of America. There's one of my music instruments that I work hard on. And here's welcome to the Nelson House. Oh, grandchildren. Hey, kids. 3 of the 4 right here. There's my pile of instruments. I'm the proud owner of a new 1969 Con D made in Elkhart. You can Google that. I'm loving the horn. I play all these things. All of these things. That's some of what you hear me do. And oh, there's Lakey. She almost missed the broadcast. They're all bigger, aren't they? Here's Ticket Street. Some of you guys maybe have never seen this, or you haven't seen it in a long time. I work on it every year. So far, on Christmas Eve this year, I made 4 new characters. 1, 2, 3, and 4. And I painted 2 horses. And that's all I've done so far. I counted the other day, by the way, Izzy, I counted 101 characters. Yeah, 101 and counting. And oh, whoops, sorry about that. Here's something you may enjoy. Just a few years ago, I discovered, oh, you know what? At Christmas time or in the winter time, I should change all the paintings on my wall. So those are all winter scenes that I've done over the years, almost over the decades. So it's just kind of fun. We have seasonally appropriate. There's more seasonally appropriate paintings on the wall. Oh, and I've got 2 wedding paintings that my clients are really slow on telling me the little changes they want me to make. And so waiting for them to come and do that. Let me straighten it out a little bit. All right. I had no monitor the whole time I was doing that, so I hope I was pointing the right way. Thanks for being here. I look forward to broadcasting again soon. Happy New Year, everybody. May 2024.